Hello and welcome to another episode here at Rome's 118. I'm your host, Eddie V. Today we're going to be talking about I don't know if you guys saw this, the Pearl and Jason Evert conversation. Very interesting. I thought it was a cool mashup of these, I guess, public figures. They had a nice little conversation. It was a conversation. It was like a debate combo. People have been doing that more now than the formal debate. It was it was nice. It was civil. I think it was the necessary conversation we needed to have that we didn't know that we needed to have. Because you got Pearl over here. She's very black pill, hates women. And then you got Jason Everett, Catholic, chastity guy, maybe theology of the body guy, John Paul II guy. So it was just it was interesting, and we're gonna get into it. I am going to just be reading from my phone the issues that just like I was taking notes on because there's just too many. I was never gonna remember all of the ones I wanted to cover, and I'll probably forget what I was gonna say about some of them, which is okay. But I'll say if you're gonna watch it, definitely explicit content. Pearl, one thing I appreciate about her is she's very straightforward, but also that straightforwardness can lead to just a lot of like jarring comments. They were in this interview, they were talking around each other so much. It was great. Like, not just because I've seen Pearl do that where she gets stuck and she'll just bring up another position immediately. And then I did see Evert, I think I'm saying his name right, Evert doing that as well. Each of them would kind of get caught maybe in a topic they didn't know much about or didn't want to talk about anymore, and then just pivot to something completely different. Like if you watch it, there's one time when Jason Everett starts talking about monkeys, and like it's like slightly related, but the way he says it's just like that just seemed like a smoke bomb there. But even then, it was, I thought, a very interesting conversation. With In just my personal experience, I'll just say this at the beginning. It does seem to me that while there does seem to be, I agree with Everett on this, and maybe we'll talk about this more, that there does seem to be like a miniature recovery in American society in terms of going back to Christianity, like a miniature. I don't want to over exaggerate it. There still seems to be, and I think there is a huge issue with family in general, and then that also includes male female relationships, father to children relationships, mother to children relationships, and then how the family interacts with society as a whole. It's a mess, and you guys probably know that. But with that, I think this is a great conversation that needs to be had because I imagine these, I don't even know what you want to call them, Catholic speakers on this, on chastity, on kind of like this John Paul II theology of the body way of coming at the issue of sex, abortion, marriage, family, society, all that stuff. They never really get this kind of pushback. So I think it's healthy. I think it's helpful for the viewer, actually, because a lot of times you're just like Pearl will talk to someone, they're just, feeding her, and then Jason Everett will talk to someone, they're just feeding him, and there's not really an honest dialogue about the facts. So I think this was really helpful. But again, very explicit, very mature content. I will say also, I disagreed sometimes or a lot of the times with Jason Everett, even though he is a Catholic speaker. I disagree with Pearl, obviously, on obvious things as well. But I will give Jason Everett credit. That man had patience of steel. Like he was, some of that stuff I feel like he's probably not. Maybe he has. He says he talks to a lot of young people, but I don't know, just like a 50-year-old guy just fielding these questions. I just felt like he was very patient, which was awesome. But having said that, let's get into it. There's not much going on besides that, I don't think. So let's just get it. I'm blocking Mary. I need to not be doing that. We're going to scoot over a little bit. Okay. There she is. So, okay, let's get into it. So I'm going to read some of these comments because I just think it'll be funny for you to hear what I'm like actually writing down for this, for my notes. So first it says porn, parentheses, common sense and morality. So in this interview, I just want to get this out of the way. Pearl has this view of pornography that is obviously not the Catholic teaching. I think she might have been raised Catholic. It definitely sounds like she went to a Catholic school growing up, which does not mean she was Catholic, but it's just interesting. And she had Jason Evert, according to this talk, went to her high school. So I thought that was really interesting too. But she has this position on porn that is not the Catholic Church's position. She does not think it's fundamentally wrong, and she thinks it can be a tool to help men who are not able to access women in marriage or otherwise. So I want to put that, like, I do not agree with that, and we should not watch porn. But I'm also maybe in this episode going to wrestle with like her points and try to understand where she's coming from, because I do think being someone who's not Catholic doesn't hold that view. I think she's honestly painting something there. But there we go. And then the next thing I said is self mastery and addiction. So they talk about this a lot, which I think is a topic that Pearl does not even believe in. I don't think she believes in self mastery. Like, you can get to a point as a man and maybe even as a woman. It didn't seem, they didn't really get too specific on her end, but she made it seem like she just doesn't think men can get to a place where they are not addicted to sex, or that it's not like something that is affecting them on the daily. So I thought that was interesting. And I can see where she's coming from. If you come from a place where you don't have God, or you don't have transcendental values, sex becomes very important, because it is one of the most amazing natural things in the world. So if you don't have the supernatural, and this is like, we can take it a weird way with like the gods, the pagan gods. What did people do with them? It was like very often revolving around sex, because it's a very powerful, very high up in the natural realm experience, action. Obviously, it brings forth life. So all those things are very high up. So if you don't have God, I can see how, like, it's like, how could you possibly live without that? So I thought that was interesting. And again, another thing I disagree with Pearl on. And then the next thing I said is policing versus discerning before marriage. So she brings up this thing where she's talking about women shouldn't police men, and Everett's pushing back, saying, like, what was he saying really? She's saying you shouldn't police men. He's saying, well, you kind of have to, because you need to know if he's a good man or not. I agree with Evert on this, but I see where Pearl is coming from. I think the word she should have used is, like, you shouldn't nag a man, but then Everett's talking about you need to discern beforehand. And I think both men and women need to discern beforehand the man. And there's certain attributes about a person that I think should disqualify them from you marrying them, which an example of this would be porn addiction, where Pearl is saying, like, you shouldn't, a woman shouldn't police a man about pornography. She's like, yeah, you shouldn't police him, but I would just not get in a relationship with them. So that's more, I would say it's more discerning, but they weren't really getting nuanced with that. A comment that Jason Everett was making was, he was saying, like, we're all going to get fat, so you just need to, like, be okay. I'm paraphrasing and, like, exaggerating this a little bit, but this is what it sounded like he was saying. He's like, we're all going to get fat, so, like, you need to be okay with, like, women being fat or something like that. And I was just like, no, I don't think that's true. There's a lot of older people that are skinny. So just my experience. And I think, obesity is usually a sign of ill health, or, lack of self-control. So I don't want to support that at all. I don't think you should hate someone for being fat, but I don't think we should sugarcoat it, like I think Jason Everett was doing. And he's a fit guy, and he was talking about how he works out all the time. It's like, yeah, just be honest about it, I think. They were talking about needs and wants. And there was a discussion about this, like, do men need sex and all this stuff, which is like, Jason Everett made it about, like, life, like, can you survive without it? And it's like, obviously you can. But I think Pearl made a great point. She's always doing this, and we'll talk about this more. She's always doing this, calling out the two-way street concept. That's not what it's called. But she's always, like, trying to view all the criticisms of men and then, like, flip it on women, which is interesting. I think it can be helpful. But she says, like, in the same way that people are like, well, men don't need sex, she's saying, well, people always pretend in a marriage that women have to have, or they need, like, they mentioned like cuddles and stuff like that, or like, the guy getting her roses and presents. And I didn't really remember Jason ever giving a lot of pushback to that, but I think that is an interesting concept. Is if you want to do that whole needs wants game, it could flip around really quick to the women. It's like, oh well, you don't technically need this to survive, to like live. It's like I don't think either of them is talking that way, but if you're gonna use that as a point, I think it could be flipped on you real quick. The next thing I said is Pearl is going for a tit for tat porn for women social media thing. That's funny. I'm reading some of my own stuff. It's really funny. So she's doing this interesting thing where, Everett's obviously against pornography, men and women looking at it, and Pearl's like, well, if you're gonna get on men for watching pornography, you need to get on women for being on social media. And she didn't exactly make this, but I thought it was an interesting point because the porn is basically women's social media. And especially nowadays when you have stuff like OnlyFans and like an uncensored Twitter, that's basically what it's becoming. So I think that's interesting, and I agree with her to a certain extent. Like we need to get women off of social media to a degree. She even talked about later in the interview how it would be interesting to have women on social media while they're single, and then once they're married, they're not able to access it. I would be very down for that. Obviously, today's society would never go for that. It's just too authoritarian, too yeah, too controlling, or whatever you may have. We've gone so far in the liberal freedom sense, it will never happen. But I do think it's an interesting point because yeah, she's talking about how women, they crave attention, and social media is very harmful for that, whereas men crave the physical intimacy more than the attention. And I have seen that. That's just anecdotal, but I think if we look at human nature and female nature and male nature, honestly, I think there's something there. I'm still against, we should just not be watching porn ever or making it. But I think she's got a point. It's not like equivalent, but like, yeah, we need to get women off of social media. It's a huge problem. And then he's saying like, oh, but like men can still have social media. I think that's fair because I think men, and if there's no women on the social media, then so you don't have to worry about the men getting women on social media. They're just not on there. So the social media becomes the same thing like the public square was without women before. It's for men to enter into business, to enter into politics, to debate topics, which women can do too. But I think social media it's harder for them to handle. And I think it could be a prudent decision for society to make to get them off of that for their own sake. I keep getting in front of Mary. So there's that. And then the next thing is quality of women is terrible. Parentheses, attention whoring, domineering, nagging, fat, and the incentive structure of the church, society, state is not helping or maybe the cause. Parentheses, hoe to church pipeline. So Pearl's making the point that like a lot of the options for men in terms of women are these things that I mentioned here. They're attention whoring, so there seems to be a degree. I mean, maybe not a degree. This is just happening where women are vying for all men's attentions. You can just think of like one Instagram post is like you just see one where it's unmodest and you just know what I'm talking about. And then you have these women that are very domineering. I've seen this in real life where you'll have even very Catholic relationships where the woman just dominates and it's everything she says goes. It's disturbing and it's very uncomfortable to be around for I've been in situations where I challenge the domineering woman and it's like their man won't say anything about it. It's like it's very strange. And it is, in my opinion, like it's not a very attractive. The nagging is very obvious and I see it a lot. And then we already talked about fat, obesity among women. And then, Everett's going to be like, well, what about men? And I think these don't really pan out except for maybe the fat thing. There's a lot of fat men too. And then so Pearl argues, like women don't care much about men being fat as men care about women being fat. I don't even know, honestly. I think women care. I don't know to what degree. Obviously you'll see an attractive woman marry a fat man if he has money. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's worth talking about. And then this is interesting. And I do agree with her, like the quality of women. And I've only been alive when I've been alive. So it's hard for me to compare, but from what people say that have lived in other times, Boomer, Gen X, it does seem like the quality of women has gone down in terms of, maybe we'll call it virtue or pleasant, like general pleasantness or courtesy. I think that has gone down from what I hear. The second thing she says is very interesting. She says, and the second thing I wrote about what they were saying, and the incentive structure of the church, society, state is not helping, or maybe the cause. Ho to church pipeline. So she talks about how society is like rewarding women's behavior in this way, the attention whoring, the domineering, the nagging, um, all of the qualities of women that maybe were the more anti-feminist movement is raging against today, you could say. The church is, and this is their argument. I don't know if I've seen this a lot, but the church is lifting up like empowering women and like, oh, look at this woman doing this and that. Look at this woman that used to be a porn star, now she's a Christian. Look at this woman, she was doing all these things and now we're going to let her talk a lot in the church and she's super famous now. And that's what Pearl's complaining about. And I kind of get her point. And she even mentions, which was interesting, she says, like, those people, it would still bother me, but they should do a period of penance before I could respect them from getting famous and like getting the super Christian guy after, being a porn star for 20 years or whatever. I think she's got a point. She's very cynical. So you got to be careful with that. But she does have a point where I do think the church is incentivizing women to act this way. All the women, they're holding all these different offices in the local parish, in terms of Catholic. They, everything's women this, women that, women great, women awesome, men bad. Men, it's like, this man is you, like, and you suck. And then women, it's like, beloved of the Father. Yeah. I do think we're like incentivizing. We're not asking women to like be virtuous. We're only being like, you need to stop sleeping around, and once you do, everything's perfect and dandy. Where with the men, it's like you need to like change everything and be virtuous. I do think there is that, and that's a legitimate concern. And then obviously with the society is promoting pornography and other things, so that's obvious. And then with the state, you have the divorce laws, abortion laws, abuse, believe all women stuff going on. So I think that's very obvious. Like, women have a advantage in all of these, and it's incentivizing them. And this is part of feminism, part of the whole DEI stuff. It's everywhere. So you probably already know that, but I think it was worth mentioning. Talked about the penance period, which I think is legit. I wish they would bring up Saint Mary of Egypt, because Saint Mary of Egypt, she was a prostitute, slept around, had a huge conversion, and lived in the desert for like 47 years or something like that. So there is precedent for it. It's just, I think in the modern age, we don't like penance in general. And, again, we don't want to come down hard on these women. And then Evert made an interesting thing where he's like, what about St. Paul? He's a murderer. I mean, St. Paul did preach, it seems like, right after his conversion, but he also spent a significant amount of time in like the Arabian desert, like away from I can't remember if it was 3 years or 15 years. I want to say it was 3 years, but it was a long time. And I don't think it was, would he not be an apostle if he didn't do that? But I think as an apostle and as someone who like really loved Jesus, had a radical conversion, he did feel like that was necessary, or at least he did do that. And we can ponder on why he did that. So I don't know if that was a great example from him or a great comeback. Pearl talks about you have to judge the past. Everett's like, you got to forgive and forget. I'm very much about the forgive, and that's just a Christian thing. I don't know if you have to forget, and I don't necessarily think, I'm slouching. I don't necessarily think like you have to, like, some men are going to be fine with it. They're like, you slept around, but you seem like you've gone past that. Let's go. And some men are going to be like, no, it's just not my cup of tea, or I've saved myself, so I'm not going to do that. And I think it's different each person, but I do think you're not going to want to ignore it. You're going to want to, address it and deal with it. So I think it's okay to look at the past. I don't know what judge means in this scenario, but you got to be, wise as a serpent, innocent as doves. And it seems like Pearl's more siding on the wise as opposed to the innocent, and then Everett's going on the other side. But yeah, you should discern. Like, you don't want to attach yourself. And another thing they didn't talk about, which Everett should bring up, is for a Catholic, the reason that this is so important, this discerning, is for the Catholic, you cannot get divorced. So if you pick the wrong woman, assuming it's nothing, that like annulled the marriage, which often I would argue it's not. Like you got to pick very wisely, and this woman could make your life very difficult. And then if it happens, like it's a cross God's given you, but you really don't want to have that. So I respect Pearl saying, like, you got to discern, not just this kind of like modern theology of the body, like, oh, it's just love, and love's gonna get us through no matter what. I mean, it will, but like you got to be smart. And the thing they're saying, love will get you through. I don't think it's like the love that it's a very fugazi instead of like a sacrificial. I know Jason Everett knows this, but the way he talks about it it's very surfacey to me. They talked brief. I just want to mention they talked briefly about the trad wife marketing scheme, and they talk about Sarah Stock and how she got blessed. But I don't think Pearl understands a blessing from the Pope. Their marriage, like, it's not really that important. Like the Pope's not like looking into their past and looking into their current situation before he blesses someone. So that's not a big deal. She keeps mentioning that. I don't know what they're talking about with the marketing scheme. I could see how like there is a market for the trad wife LARP or existence of whatever you want to call it. But I don't really understand what they were getting at with that. They're talking about consequences for men and not women. That's obvious, I think. I might just then that's part of the incentive structure that we're talking about before, is like women are incentivized to be how they are now, and men are punished for good and bad things constantly. It's a very anti-male society. This is what I wanted to get to. I put it in the middle of the episode, but they talked about obedience. And I personally think that Evert just drops the ball every time. He's doing this Father Mike Schmitz thing where it's like, it's not obedience, it's submission. And submission means that as long as your husband's being a saint, you obey him. And if he's not being a saint, then you disobey him. And it's like, dude, why do we have to do this? The scripture is very clear. He's like doing like, he doesn't say obedient as in the Greek word for like a slave. It says submit for like a companion. It's like, bro, just answer the dude. Does the wife have to obey the husband or not? Why do we have to do this to ourselves? I just think he's straight up wrong. And you can read Cassie Kanumi is very nice about it. It's like, yes, the woman has to obey the husband, but it talks about all the women's dignity and all this stuff. She's not a slave. It's like, we know that stuff, but it's like at the end of the day, like, is she supposed to be obedient? Okay, great. Well, she's not being that. So we need to, should someone talk to the women or something? I don't know, but it's not happening, right? So that's always just very frustrating. It's like, why can't we just say things straight up? Let's say it straight up and then nuance afterwards. Like we start with like crazy nuances in the beginning, which I don't even know if those are true that he's saying. But it's like, let's just say the truth. And then if we need specific situations or more help, let's get into that. I just think he's very wrong on that. And I think it's very harmful for women and for men in marriages. They talk about the standard is wives not listening. I agree as well. Wives are very rebellious. And I think the incentive structure, again, it encourages them to be rebellious. The fact that women can vote is like a very rebellious thing. It's like a wife can basically annul her husband's vote. And that's like protected by the state. Like the man can't force his wife to vote a certain way. So I think that's just like everything is for that, is for the women to be uppity and rebellious and just bothering everyone. And then if the woman is not obedient or she's naggy, instead of putting personal responsibility on the woman, Evert immediately says like, it's her upbringing. She just doesn't want to be, she wants to be free. It's like, then don't get married. It's like a nun being like, I want to be free. And it's like, well, don't be a nun then. Okay, it's a specific vocation. I said kids have to obey, but wife doesn't. It's like, how does hierarchy work for Jason Everett? I have no idea. It's like, oh, he's like, there has to be hierarchy in the church. There has to be hierarchy in the family with the parents and the children, but there cannot be hierarchy with the man and the woman. It's like, okay, so no one's egalitarian except for the husband and the wife. Weird how that worked out for you, Jason Everett. I said I wrote a bad word here, but I said the woman is a nag. Need to tell her. I think that's a society thing. Like we need to be willing to tell women when they're not being a good woman. Obesity, we kind of talked about that. I do think it's a problem on both sides, but that's just a self-control thing. We need to be honest about it, but I don't want to be mean about it. But yeah, you do need to be honest about it. And I'll be honest with like someone I date, but I'm not going to just go start telling random women they're fat. I said Everett not understanding if a man can get a virtuous woman, he might as well get the most attractive woman he can. Yeah, so Pearl was trying to make this point. This is like a heathen or a hedonistic point, but all these women are very not all the women, but like there's a lot of women that are very unpleasant. And for the men, if you're a man that can do this, the men are really, if that's not something that's out there, the men are going immediately to the looks. They go to the looks first, but like ideally you get a good looking a woman you're attracted to and virtuous. But men are just like, well, I can't get a virtuous woman. There's just none. So I'll just go for the attractive woman. And Pearl was trying to make that point and just did not seem like Everett could wrap his head around that. He was just dodging that like it was his day job, which is very interesting. I wrote here his situation has blinded him. Pearl was saying like, dude, you married this chick and it worked out for you. That's why you can't see the current situation for men and women. I don't know, maybe. They got into a bunch of these statistic wars and it was going on the whole episode. So I just want to warn you. I looked up a couple of the statistics they're mentioning. It's so nuanced and like I don't even know how much I trust these statistics. Like how are they getting the information? They never asked me. I am a Catholic male. They never asked me anything. So where are these numbers coming from? I don't understand. They talk about most women have debt or STDs. I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, that's very bad. I've met a lot of women with debt. I don't know if they had STDs, but it is a huge problem. And the the theme is the women are getting in a lot of student debt and not working jobs that can pay it off because they want to get married after. And it's like, bruh. And women don't enjoy work. All the women I work with, they don't enjoy it. They just want to get married. But yeah, I'm not going to get that. I said, I'm down for separate bank accounts, have to face the facts. So they're talking about separate bank accounts. Everett was talking about how like that's like not possible in a good marriage. I don't know. Women are usually, they're spendy. And if I know, obviously, I hope I know that before, but if I find out during my marriage, like she's just spending willy nilly on pointless crap, I'm going to give her own bank account and be like, yeah, you got $200 this week access to, like, good luck, no credit card. I think that's very practical. And I think he would say like, oh, you're treating her like a child. It's like, act like a child, get treated like a child. I don't know. He's like, we got to be straightforward. It's like, dude, that's straightforward. Different biology or no, Everett. The point is that certain things are applicable to one sex more than the other. Yeah, the whole time he was flip-flopping on this. It's like, with women, if it's a positive thing, it's like, oh, only women have this thing. If it's a negative thing, it's like, oh, like, men and women both have this problem. It's like, you can't accept that there's some things that only women are dealing with that are bad, and it's a woman thing. It just seemed like he couldn't accept that. He's very, femme coded. He loves the women. He's probably got a great wife. They talked about hypergamy. I'm not going to get into that too much, but right now with the current situation, the access women have to men there, you have all the women picking high status men. That's just how it is. And we've talked about it before. I'm not going to get into it too much. Everett talks about, you got to get out of the basement, but he's talking about like it's the men's fault too, or only, where they got to get out of the basement. They got to make money. They got to be high value to like get the marriages up or to get the women. And I'm saying like, I see even high value men, whether, good looking guys with a lot of money, they're still keeping away from marrying women. These men that aren't Catholic, of course, they'll sleep around with women, but they're still not marrying them because to them, it's just not worth it. So I think that's helpful advice, but you got to be honest the whole way around. Is like, it is still the women to a large degree, no matter if you're high value or not. I said, Everett hates monks. Better to die alone than to have a psycho wife. Yeah. Everett was saying like, you're a coward if you don't get married to this woman, if you feel called to it. And for me, I'm with St. Paul, it's like, I'm not going to get married unless it's a solid woman. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, you feel called to marriage, like marry a psycho. It's like, no, I'm good actually. And then he said, you've lost it already. Like you've lost life basically. If you want it, if you feel called to marriage and you don't get married, it's like that implies that marriage is like your whole life. And you could turn that around with like priesthood. If like a man like felt called to the priesthood and for some reason it didn't work out or he chose not to, his whole life is over. It's like, I don't think so. And the example brought up, obviously you could argue his call was to do this, but like Saint Benedict Joseph Lebray, he tried to be a monk multiple times and it didn't work out. And he ended up doing this thing where he wandered from pilgrimage site to pilgrimage site. And people will now say that was calling, but I'm sure people at the time were like, this is not your calling. But it worked out for him. Sorry, I'm deleting so I can see the stuff underneath. I'm gonna skip that. Promiscuity before marriage and gender differences. Talking about like the view of promiscuity, like from men viewing women that are promiscuous before marriage versus women looking at men who are promiscuous. I do think there's a difference, and I don't know why Jason Everett couldn't just admit that. Like people, the genders see it differently, and it's just a fact. I don't know why we had to argue about that. Jason Everett saying like, I want my marriage to be super official. I think he was blowing past Pearl's point. Pearl was saying like, why don't people just get married in the church and not get the state involved? Because the state is the one that you can divorce and take all their stuff like that. I thought it was a good point. I'm not necessarily saying you should do that, but I thought her point was interesting. And he's just saying like, no, marriage, you have to have every organization acknowledge it. And I'm like, I thought that was a weak argument. I would be down if it was detrimental doing the state thing. And I don't know what the church is teaching on this, but I'd be down to just do it through the Catholic Church. I would be fine with that. We need community shaming correction. I agree. I think we do need more shaming. That could go a lot of different ways. That word has a lot of connotations, but I think we could use it. Marriage reform and telling women to shut up. Pearl puts forward like marriage reform. I think she was talking politically. I don't know if she's talking about in the church. And I think, yeah, I think that's true. I think the way it's set up is pretty terrible gig for men. So that would be nice. And Evert, I don't think he really engaged with that. Telling women to shut up. I mean, I think, St. Paul said it best. We don't want to be mean about it, but it is the truth. And it's going to sound mean no matter how you do it. So I don't know how that's going to go down, but I think there's a point there. Freedom is measured by capacity. I'm not. He keeps talking about like freedom is measured by capacity to love. I just don't think it was helpful because he just like kept bringing it up as like a flashpoint. And it's like I didn't really relate, I think, to what was being said, or it wasn't a helpful way to say it. He wasn't meeting Pearl where she was at. He was just kind of saying John Paul II theology of the body stuff out of thin air without any prep. He said marriage is not about you. I would disagree. I think marriage is about, like with Fulton Sheen, he says it's about three persons, or yeah, it's about God, the man, and the woman. So the man is a part of that, and he's saying like, men, suck it up, just marry who. Yeah, he's not saying this, but it sounds like it. Basically, sometimes sounds like he's like, men, just sack up and marry, even if you don't know, she's the right one or she's got problems. Like you're just being a baby and a coward. It's not about you. I don't think that's great advice. It's just like, why can't you just call out women, man? It's crazy. Men versus women on social media. This is just a truth that he didn't seem to want. I mean, actually, it didn't seem like he accepted at the end, where it's like women use social media for different reasons than men do. And if you go on social media for 2 seconds, you will see that very obviously. And so Pearl's advocating for, banning women off of social media or married women off. I am down for that so much. And when a woman tells me they don't have social media, my ears perk up because I'm like, okay, this is legit. So, okay, that was a lot, but it's an interesting one. There's a lot of interesting topics. I'm going to stop pretty hardcore there. Hope you guys enjoyed. Check it out if you want. Don't get blackpilled like Pearl though, but also be more cautious, be more discerning than Jason Everett is discussing for sure. But God bless you. God keep you. I think I'll do an episode tomorrow if I have time on the catechism. We kind of did an offshoot here, but thanks for watching. God bless you. God keep you. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the shorts, and I will see you next time. Oh, and I was kind of looking raggedy today, but that's the way it is. See you next time. Bye.